Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Family Law Show. I'm your host, Enrique Figueroa, and joining me today, we have Kris Leavitt, attorney, owner, and managing partner of O'Brien and Associates family law firm in Redmond, Washington. Kris is highly experienced in family law matters such as adoption, alimony, child custody, and child support, with a particular focus on divorce. In addition to family law, Kris has practiced business litigation with two nationally recognized law firms, where he has provided counsel to a number of Fortune 500 companies, and his education and experience in business litigation have made him an exceptional advocate when it comes to dividing high-value assets in family law matters. Among his accolades, Kris has been named a top 10 attorney in Best of the Best Attorneys, and the National Academy of Family Law Attorneys has listed him on their top 10 attorneys under 40 list. Kris, welcome to the show. Glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So yeah, I mean, we had a lot of good stuff there to lead in. I don't even know necessarily where to jump in, but I think you're going to be bringing a very unique insight to our show today. We actually have not had an attorney yet who acquired a law firm, which is where we're at with O'Brien and Associates. Correct? Like you came in and actually acquired the law firm instead of building it from the ground up, right?
I did. That's true. Previously I'd been practicing in Nevada. I'd started my own practice there and then made a move up here to Washington, where I was able to take over an existing law firm.
Great. So are you from Nevada originally?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Vegas. I'm a kind of a rare breed for Las Vegas.
Okay. Where'd you go to school?
I did my undergraduate in Utah at BYU, and then I did law school out in Indiana in Bloomington at the IU Maurer School of Law.
Right. So what kind of brought you to get into law? Like where did you kind of find your passion for that?
For me, it's kind of a funny story, because growing up, my grandpa he was a judge and then eventually a Nevada Supreme Court justice. And I have, 5 uncles and 2 aunts who have practiced law in Nevada. And so growing up, I told myself, it's just not for me. I'm going to kind of strike out, do my own thing. But the more I kind of learned about law, the more I learned about what lawyers do. It just really fit for me. I really enjoy analyzing things, finding how things, a certain case is similar to an existing case, how it's different, and kind of trying to chop that up and analyze it so that, I can put the pieces back together the way I'd like.
So you mentioned it's kind of a family line going through the legal profession. Where did your family members specialize? What vertical of law?
Let's see. One of my uncles in Nevada does criminal defense. Another one does large eminent domain cases. I have an uncle and now 2 cousins who actually have a family law practice in Las Vegas. I have another aunt who is a district court judge in Las Vegas. And so we kind of run the gambit.
So how did you find your way into business law when you first started out? Is that where you first started out? Like that was the original area?
That is, my original plan coming out of law school was to do business litigation. I had an undergraduate degree in business management, and I thought, I enjoyed business. I enjoyed learning about business, and I thought that I could take my business education and my law degree and kind of put them together. And so when I graduated law school, I actually was able to clerk for a judge in Las Vegas who was the chief judge of Nevada's business court. And so we handled a lot of high profile business litigation, construction defect, contract disputes, stuff like that.
So that's pretty high level stuff and seems quite different than family law. How'd you find your way over to family law from that?
So a big part of it for me was when I was there when I was clerking, and then I eventually went on to work at a couple, really well-known law firms. I guess where I really struggled was kind of the path to partnership, because even as a young attorney, I was looking around at a lot of my peers, a lot of associates, a lot of senior associates, attorneys who were trying to, make their way up to partner. And it it seemed like a lot of attorneys would struggle for, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and never quite make that jump. And so I thought, well, at the end of the day, I either wanted to be a partner, I wanted to have a practice that I had control over so that I wasn't just grinding away, working for someone else. I was able to build something that I wanted to build, that I could be proud of. And I eventually ended up, like I said, moving out on my own in Nevada. I started up a practice there, worked there on my own for about 3 years before coming up here to Washington. And I've been up here for about 1.5 years, coming up on 2 years.
So you mentioned that the path moving up to, say, partner or taking the leap to jump into your own firm, it can be a long process. What do you think some of the roadblocks are in regards to that? Is it a fear-based thing, or is it just playing the political game? Like what exists kind of in being an associate and moving up to a higher position?
In the firms where I was practicing, one of the biggest hurdles I found was business development, because we were working for, huge, international corporations. And so establishing good contacts and good connections on the inside of the corporate client was how you eventually acquired business. And so most of the attorneys, most of the contacts I had were, kind of newer, younger attorneys, lower level people. And so, if I would have stayed working at those firms, maybe 10 years down the road, the people that I'm working with, the contacts I have, start making their way up to the point where they're making decisions. And I think those were the attorneys that were successfully able to make that jump from associate to partner, is they were the ones that had built those relationships, had established those relationships, and were able to say, all right, well, listen, now if you aren't going to make me partner, I could potentially walk away and take some of these clients with me.
Now, is that type of situation, is that fairly consistent, you feel, with most areas of law, or is that kind of more of a business law, like higher? I guess the term is, in terms of the clientele you're working with, in business law, you're working with corporations, you're forming those relationships. It's, I suppose, less transactional in the sense with, say, criminal law or family law, right?
Yeah. And I think that that's definitely the case. Is when you're working with business and corporate clients, you have people at the top of the business, at the top of the chain, that are making the decisions, and they have people that they've worked with over the years, they've made their contacts with. But you don't have that same kind of a roadblock when you're doing, I call it more consumer focused law, when you're doing like criminal defense, family law, bankruptcy, personal injury, estate planning. With those areas, you're able to, meet someone, make connections, and bring the work in from day one.
Okay. So in terms of making that jump and wanting to own your own firm or be a partner, the jump from, say, Vegas business law to, Redmond, Seattle area, Washington family law, how did that occur? Like, how did that transition happen? Like, what was the process that went from that to that? Because that sounds like kind of a really big jump or a big difference, right?
It was, and it wasn't a jump all at once. When I started my own practice in Nevada, I became much more of a general practitioner. The firm I was with before, we had done employer side discrimination defense. And so when I went out on my own, I actually started taking plaintiff side employment cases. And so I was able to use some of that knowledge and kind of go to the other side of the caption. I was also able to start reaching out to my family, my extended network connections. And I talked to a lot of people who were able to, they were practicing in a lot of different areas. And so I was able to get a feel for that. And one of the areas that I kind of gravitated to in that 3 years in Nevada was family law. It was an area where I could come in, I could, help a client with a really pressing, urgent need. And it wasn't a case that would, be languishing away in court, going through 2 or 3 or 4 years of discovery. It was usually something we're able to get in, handle the information that we've got, exchange discovery, and get a case resolved fairly quickly. So I felt like I was able to step in there and really make an impact for my clients.
Do you like that element of family law where things are kind of more person to person and you can see a resolution fairly quickly and you can be very hands-on with the process all the way through?
I do. I definitely like that because at the end of the day, if I go into court and I win on a motion or I go to trial and I get a favorable verdict, then for me, I've been able to help my client immensely. I mean, maybe it means that they get more time with their kids. Maybe it means that they're able to pull themselves out of a really bad relationship. And I really do enjoy being someone who can step in and have that kind of impact for my clients.
Now, as a father of four, which I believe you are, do you think you feel like a bit more of a closeness and a connection to the stories you hear and what you work with in family law now?
I mean, it definitely hits a little closer to home. I mean, before, when you're sitting there between two big companies who are arguing over contract interpretation, I mean, there's not a lot of feeling to that. It's just a matter of, all right, how are we going to get this resolved? Who's got the better argument? But now doing family law is it does hit closer to home because I have a lot of my clients who come in and say, I'm trying to get out of this bad relationship and my husband or my wife, my partner is trying to keep my kids from me. Or, I went through this divorce a couple years ago and now I've got my former partner, my former spouse I think she might have a drug habit or he might have a drug problem or there's issues of violence in the home. Then, I mean, that's stuff that really does hit closer to home.
Now, how big is the firm right now that you're running? We have how many attorneys, how much staff?
Right now we have 3 attorneys and 2 paralegals and then I have an office manager and a billing clerk. So we have 7 people working at the firm.
It's a good amount. How does this, so I know that you actually acquired the firm. So how does that process work? Because honestly, that's foreign to me. I've never had a guest on the show who's actually went out and purchased a firm or went out and actually found a firm that said, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. I want to partner up or I want to take over. How does that process work out?
So I actually had some help. I was looking around. My wife and I had kind of made the decision we wanted to relocate up to Western Washington. And so we started looking around and actually got put in touch with a business broker. He is a former attorney, used to practice. I think he practiced for 10 or 12 years and then transitioned out, started up his own business where he's, like I said, a business broker. He helps attorneys. And I think he's even branched out now into like CPA practices, physical therapy, chiropractor, but he puts people in touch, puts buyers and sellers in touch so they can, kind of begin the process of seeing if it's a good fit to take over a practice, what the value of the practice would be. And so when I ran into that particular broker, he had several law firms that he was representing. And so I was able to kind of look through there and I found this practice here in Redmond. The location was a good fit. Practice area was a good fit. And so I jumped.
Now, in terms of kind of personalities and differences, I'm curious, you've seen Las Vegas and I mean, Vegas is Vegas. I can only imagine that, the overall feel and personality that you're working with now versus Las Vegas has to be like night and day, right?
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, Vegas has been very good to my family. I still have almost all of my family is living down there. And so I go back quite a bit, but I mean, Vegas is just such a unique town. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you have there's so many people who perform in shows and you have restaurants that are kind of over the top. And so Vegas is its own animal.
And I mean, now where you are, in Washington, it's got to be a bit more nature driven, kind of more of a calm, not to say sedentary, but more of a Zen lifestyle. Does that kind of play into more of your interests? Like, what are you into on the side other than being, a lawyer?
Yeah. I mean, Western Washington definitely is. And I think that it's a good thing. It's a slower pace. Like you said, I mean, there's lots of parks and trails and rivers and lakes. And so, I mean, in the summer times, as soon as the sun starts peeking out from behind the clouds, people are on the lake, they're fishing, they're hiking. In the winter time, there's still lots of, good winter hiking, good winter trails. We've got, resorts where people can ski and snowboard. And for me, I love that. That was one of the biggest draws to bring me up to Washington. I grew up fishing. My family, we'd go from Las Vegas. We would drive up into kind of south central Utah, get back into some of the mountains back there. We'd fish on, different lakes and rivers and streams up there. We would go camping up there all the time. We would ride quads and snowmobiles back there. And so I always loved being outdoors. And so when we made the move up here, that was a huge draw for us because, I live in a little town just south of Redmond called Sammamish. And our little house that we're renting right now I think it's like 10 minutes from 3 different lakes where I can go fish. The kids all love paddle boarding and kayaking in the summertime and just swimming in the lake. And I don't even know, we've been here almost 2 years and I don't even think that we've gone on half the hiking trails within 20 or 30 minutes of the house.
Wow. So how old are the kids? 4 kids. What are the ages?
So I got 4 kids. I have a son who's the oldest and then 3 daughters. My son is 12 and then my daughters are 10, 8, and 6.
And they all are getting like that outdoorsy bug through you? Like they like going hiking, fishing, things like that?
Yeah. With the kids, it's kind of funny because when we want to go out on, the weekends and go for, even if it's just a little walk or a hike, it's always the same kind of thing. The kids are like, oh, do we have to go? Do we have to go? It's kind of a fight to get them into the car. And then we'll start driving to the hike and they're like, okay, they start loosening up a little bit. And then as soon as we hit the trail, we're 5 minutes in, everyone's running around and they're playing games and they're loving it. And then at the end of the hike, they're like, oh, can we do this again next week? Yeah, we're going to do this again next week.
That's good to know because that actually gives me a little hope because, being, more quarantine based out here lately, I'm just constantly trying to find things with my wife to do with our daughter. We have one child, little girl. She's 7.5. And, I don't know. I should definitely take that approach where it's like, look, just get in the car. We're going to go out somewhere, go on a hike, get some fresh air. Because I swear these walls are starting to close in on her. Like the energy levels are just through the roof 24/7. And we're just struggling to find some sort of like outdoor outlet that we can all do together.
I could definitely relate because this past summer with COVID and everything, with everything being locked up, we tried to get out on hikes and walks and to the lake as much as we could because the kids were going stir crazy. My wife is going stir crazy. I was going stir crazy. And so if we'd been back in Vegas over this past summer, I can't even imagine how hard that would have been. So I was very, very glad we were up here this summer.
So with COVID and everything, did you have to kind of change things up at all with how the firm did business? Or were you always somewhat prepared for just the idea of, things being remote, do things over the phone? 2020, 2021 being how they are, we're in a modern age. Did you have to make a lot of big sweeping changes at the firm or was it just kind of a little flick of the switch?
We were pretty fortunate. We were locked in. We had remote desktop capabilities where attorneys and pretty much everyone could work remotely. We've actually had our 2 paralegals. They have not been in the office for about a year now. So they've both been working at home, staying at home. We've been able to communicate with them and get things going. Obviously there are hiccups and there's things we've had to adjust to, but for the most part, we were able to slide over and do remote working pretty seamlessly. We've had to pick up some new technology, like we do client consults. Before we were doing all of our client consults face to face, and now we've switched over to the point where we're utilizing Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, and sometimes we're just doing telephonic consults. So there have been some road bumps, but we were able to slide over pretty seamlessly.
Well, Kris, I hope you definitely get out and see the great outdoors this year, and we wish you nothing but the best for the practice in 2021. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Once again, for everyone listening, Kris Leavitt of O'Brien & Associates, and thank you for watching the Family Law Show. As always, if you like what we're laying down, please be sure to subscribe or visit us on scorpion.co, and you can follow us, read about the show, read about Kris and the firm, and we hope to see you again next time.